So when we took over the Emmons House, Steve and Natalie Emmons used to live here and they donated it to us. But there were a lot of differences when they lived here. Over the years, it had been modernized for their use, and as it should have been. But underneath, we wondered, did the original house still exist? And so we started to renovate it. And the first thing we did was there used to be like 3 layers of ceiling here. And we didn't know what was underneath that ceiling and how much was intact of the original building. And so we ripped off those 3 layers of ceiling, and we found a lot of mouse nests, and we found a lot of mess. But when we finally revealed what was there, we were delighted to see that all of the old beams were still very much intact, and that the color of the ceiling was this dark color that was caused by smoke over the years that was coming out of the fireplace. And we could see where it had been trimmed down from time to time in order to make other things level, and we could see nails in it where it had been used to hang things in times past. But all of it was the authentic building that went up, probably like a barn raising that took place. And in the corner of each of the beams, there were Roman numerals that you could see that were carved in there so they know which pieces would have to go where. And the thing we were most excited about and curious about was the chimney. And there was a carpet all over the floor that had been there for many, many years, because when we tried to pull it up, it really stuck to the floor and it took a lot of effort to get rid of it. But when we pulled it back, the whole hearth revealed itself, and the whole brick pattern was on the floor. And in some cases, the bricks were in perfect condition. In other cases, they were broken in places, and we thought that's probably where they split kindling to feed the fire. And what was on this wall here was a series of boards. So it was all of this top half of the ceiling was like it is now. The bottom half was all boarded up, and so we took those boards off, and then beneath the boards it was all bricked up. And so I wanted to know if anything was behind the bricks and if the original fireplace was still there. So I started to take the bricks out, and then it occurred to me that if I take too many, will the whole chimney collapse because of its age? And so I paused for a minute, went in to call a mason, and the mason said, put your hand along the base of the chimney, right in the very center, and feel if there's a solid metal piece that goes the whole extent of the fireplace. And if there's right in the center, like the head of a bolt. And I felt, and sure enough, there it was. And he said, if that is intact, then in fact what's happening is the weight of this is being borne by the rafters, and so it was okay to take out the rest of the bricks. So we knocked out the rest of the bricks and were delighted to find that the whole fireplace was intact. At the time, it was filled with ash halfway up the chimney, so it was a mess. And it was a hot summer's day, and the ash was going everywhere, and we were a mess. But we were excited that this was still here. Most exciting was the fact that a beehive oven still existed. So this whole oven was where they used to do the baking. And they would have a fire in there and take the coal ashes out and the embers and put them underneath. And they had a covering that would go here, but that would hold a temperature for hours. And they did baking in there. We found fish bones in there as well, that sort of thing. And we were looking for implements that they would have used, but none were there. Although we were able to replace some of them later on. And when kids are here, and I ask them what this reminds them of, and they almost always say a pizza oven. And that's exactly what it does, and exactly the same process. But but that was how baking took place in the early years. So what existed here that we saw was this whole house had changed little from when it was built in either the very late 1700s or the very early 1800s. And all of its construction is here, the fireplace is here, all of the floorboards. It's amazing that it had never been really insulated in all those years. So one of the rooms upstairs is exactly the same as when it was built. It wasn't changed at all. And on either side, the rooms, one of them remains the same. On this side over here, there used to be what they call the larder, where they would store food and dry supplies for to get through the winter for other times. And down below, if we were to go into the cellar, it appears as though that they had carved like a little cave in the earth out front where they would put, it would be like their refrigerator, where they could keep things cooled in the winter or in the summer. And then a birthing room on the left, and we talked about that, like if you weren't feeling well, a lot of time you'd stay in there. And why? And it's because you're close to the fire, and because in all likelihood your mother would have been doing a lot of work in the kitchen area. It took a lot of work to prepare meals using a fireplace and getting the food in the natural way that they did. And so that way she could keep an eye on you, and there was heat and that sort of thing. So the house is a great learning experience. This was a very nice house for the time period, and it's representative of houses that were throughout our town and throughout the state of Maine at that time.